Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in once again today. Before we begin our show, I urge you to share the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. Tell someone about the show, hit the subscribe button so you catch every single episode, and give us a good review on your podcast app. If you don't mind taking a minute, it sure helps us out. Today, we have a rare double solo episode, 2 in a row. But this one was far too fascinating to sit on. I absolutely had to release this immediately after writing it. Today's show is focusing on a geographical area somewhere far away where the podcast has never taken us before. Our episode today takes us to Africa, specifically the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we seek to answer a question again. This time, why don't we see Congolese coffee on shelves, in roasteries, and on menus? We see Kenyan coffee, Ethiopian coffee, all sorts of African origins. So where is the coffee from Congo? Well, the answer is a complex one with a lot of twists and turns. So grab a hot mug and let's dive into today's episode, all about the Democratic Republic of Congo and Congolese coffee. The DRC, formerly Congo, formerly Zaire, is a wildly fascinating region with a rich history and richer land, which has been tragically ravaged by decades of war. It's the second largest country in Africa, clocking in at 900,000 square miles. That's over 3 times the size of Texas, with 9 other African countries bordering it. The Democratic Republic of Congo is extraordinarily rich in minerals. It is actually considered to be the richest country in the world in regards to natural resources. The country is rich in silver, gold, and platinum deposits, not to mention palladium and copper, cadmium, and so much more. And sadly, this level of wealth does not translate to the people. Some estimates propose that the total mineral wealth of the Congo exceeds 24 trillion US dollars. And this extraordinary mineral wealth that Congo sits on contributes to its very tumultuous existence and history. If you turn back the clock 500 years or so, the Kingdom of Congo ruled West Africa. After some interactions with the Portuguese, fast forward to 1885, eventually the Congo was colonized by none other than the Belgians. Belgian colonization was ugly, as is any time in history where one people oppresses another. And that colonization period lasted all the way until 1960, when a Congolese revolt led the Belgians to relinquish their power. But this didn't end the chaos and hardships that the Congo and its people would face, not by a long shot. After throwing off the Belgian yoke, there were massive power struggles. The Cold War played into the politics of the Congo, with Russia supporting one candidate, the U.S. supporting another, the U.S. candidate winning, renaming the country to Zaire, suppressing opposition for some time. But years of internal strife, violence, and oppression, and a crumbling economy would take its toll on then Zaire and its people. And it set the stage for a series of devastating wars. And this shouldn't come as a surprise. War is not good for coffee production. We'll get to that in just a second. But the First and Second Congo Wars were brutal. They ravaged the nation for years to come. Civil wars compounded by genocidal neighboring forces, over 5.4 million casualties in all the conflicts, the most deadly conflict since World War II. The Congo was a mineral-rich, blood-soaked jungle. And even as the war subsided, years of assassination and corruption followed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. 2018, the election then was actually probably the most peaceful and legitimate election in years. So there is hope, but it is a wild and dangerous area to this day. And as I said, a large part of that inherent chaos comes from its mineral wealth. When you're sitting on that much raw value, things can get wild. But the Democratic Republic of Congo is not only rich in rare minerals. The Congo is very rich in another sense too. The Congo is rich in coffee. The Democratic Republic of Congo is fertile. Coffee thrives in the Congolese jungle climate, and the rainforest-like farming climate is vast, lush, and nutrient-rich. Now, I had the pleasure of trying some Congolese coffee during a recent trip to Old Soul Cafe, a wonderful little coffee shop in Sacramento, California. They were fans of the podcast, and I was doing some traveling. Thank you, Old Soul Cafe. It was quite an amazing tasting, trying a couple of different Congolese-grown varieties. Interestingly enough, I'm reading very unique and different reports of Congolese coffee cupping. The flavors, of course, depending on the varieties themselves and the brew method and so many other factors as well. But I was reading things like Congolese coffee flavors exhibiting fruit notes and cream notes, vanilla and hazelnut, white chocolate. But the Congolese coffee that I tried had a very strong and very distinct tea note to it, like tea leaves. A little bitter, herbaceous, straight tea leaf tasting. One even had a bit of a tobacco note to it, along with this tea flavor. It was some of the most unique and delicious tasting coffee beans I'd ever tried. So the question still remains, why don't we see Congolese coffee on the shelves? Why aren't we drinking coffee from the Congo? Well, as I said, the answer is very complex. Obviously, coffee production dropped during those civil wars. Farmers picked up guns, and they fought for warlords. I painted that picture for you so you can understand the nation and its people and understand why it's so hard to stabilize any sort of world coffee trade from this location. So while your country is war-torn, farming coffee falls by the wayside. But also, the reverse is true. If you can find an opportunity for peace, you can convert some of these mercenaries into farmers and have them go from a very violent life to a life of agriculture. Coffee cultivation can reduce crime. This is what I was told in Colombia as well. It's a story that you hear in these impoverished nations. So less coffee being farmed is obviously going to be an issue if there's no supply, but there's even more to it than that. For instance, in recent years, coffee production in the Congo has been way up comparatively, but we still don't see it on our shelves. Why? Well, the country is very unstable in many ways, including its trade. So while Congolese coffee farmers are growing the coffee on their DRC farms, they make more money per bean by actually smuggling that coffee out of their own country and selling it in a neighboring country, selling it in, say, Sudan, which may even make its way here to the West into your cup, labeled as Sudanese coffee. Only fixing the inherent societal issues with the Congo and its trade systems will ever resolve this. And that is a very, very lofty goal. It's high time, though, from the consumer perspective. I think that there's never been a better time for Congo to try to step up and make a real name for itself in the coffee space. But maybe I'm biased, as such a fan of coffee. Other people out there do agree with me, though. There are many organizations and forces both inside and outside the Democratic Republic of Congo, trying to do exactly what I just said and put Congo on the map when it comes to coffee. Another quick shout out to Old Soul and my visit up in Sacramento. They, over at Old Soul, introduced me to Mighty Peace Coffee. This is a Congolese green coffee bean provider whose mission statement is remarkably close to what I just expressed a second ago. Check out Mighty Peace Coffee and cruise their website for a second. You will absolutely love what you see. MightyPeaceCoffee.com. It's a social impact coffee importer. They're focused on the Congo, They're focused on regenerative practices. Very, very interesting organization. I probably need to do an episode with these guys. This is one of the many little untold stories in the entire industry and universe of coffee cultivation. We're talking about the second most widely consumed beverage on the planet. And if you zoom into any given microcosm in any given country where these beans are produced, you see these stories, these incredible stories, these touching stories, sometimes tragic, often tragic. And so if there's companies out there like Mighty Peace Coffee, like Purity Coffee, who are trying to make a difference in these people's lives, it's absolutely mind-blowingly impactful. And I think that it's necessary for a bright future of not only the coffee industry, but of humanity. So don't be surprised if we do more of these episodes where we zoom in to these specific coffee stories and tales. And also don't be surprised if you see Mighty Peace Coffee on this show down the road. Their mission and their love for the Congolese culture is just heartwarming. And even though it's just coffee, it really does kind of make you believe in the inherent goodness of humanity. I think what's maybe most crucial to understand, though, is that today's story shows the incredible importance of learning the history behind your coffee and choosing your coffee wisely, as we are always saying here on the show. And if you can come to intimately understand the exotic lands and cultures from which these beans come, it gives you a much deeper appreciation for the entire coffee experience and a closer connection to the humans whose sweat and tears and even blood went into producing it. I hope you enjoyed this time with me today. I found this episode to be particularly interesting when I was writing it, and I know that you found it to be worth a listen while you drank your lovely Purity Coffee. Of course, puritycoffee.com, code CHS podcast. You can get yourself the dark roast, the flagship roast, consciously crafted for health. Thank you all so much for listening to the show. We will be back next week, and Dr. Coffee will be back. Got some really good coffee histories lined up. Stay tuned, everybody. This is Jordan River saying have an extraordinary day. We'll see you next time on the Coffee, Health, and Science Podcast. Bye-bye.